You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm Steven Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. He is John Fourcade, Ole Miss legend, and an unfortunate attendee of the football game on Saturday. John, how you doing, man?
Steve, I'm doing well. At least I got to go see friends and hang out with him, and we had a good time and leading up to the game. But, it's just one game, and there's many more left to be played.
Yeah, and we'll talk about a little bit what down in the game, but I mentioned on my podcast last week, there's three ways that this game could go. If Ole Miss played its best and Kentucky played bad, it could have been a blowout. If both teams played well, it would have been a 38-17 type game. But if Ole Miss played poorly, it was going to be 16-13 in the fourth quarter, and Kentucky was going to be driving the ball, and that's exactly what happened.
Well, if you remember a couple of years ago, or maybe last year, a year ago, when they played Kentucky, Levis was quarterback, and it came down to, I think, the last play of the game, if I'm not mistaken. So who would have thought that Kentucky and Ole Miss would be fighting to the last play, last series of the game? And it shouldn't have been that way. Ole Miss had golden opportunities. Their defense played extremely well in that football game. Except for the fourth down pass play that led to the touchdown by Kentucky in the fourth quarter. I thought Ole Miss had golden opportunities to do some things offensively, and I just didn't see it. I didn't see it from Dart. I didn't see it from Lane. I just didn't see anything. I felt like they felt, we'll just show up since we're averaging 55 points a game. But you played nobody, and I got to defend that when people ask me all about it. And you didn't play anybody. Scoring 55 points a game and giving up less than 8 points a game. But the defense came to show up in the Kentucky game. I don't think the offense and Lane Kiffin came to show up.
Yeah, it was a weird game plan in the first half. That was potentially the worst half of offense I've probably seen in 15 years at Ole Miss.
Well, when the game first started, I got a text from a good friend of mine and his wife. They were up there, and they had left the game at halftime, and they were down at the library and doing a little studying. And so they were like, hey, come on down, meet us down at the library. And I'm like, man, this game is too close for me to just get up and leave. If it had been, one of the, games where they're up by 30 at halftime, I'd have got up and left. But there was something about it. I'm like, okay, when I kept telling my buddy Tim Bell, who was with me because he was an M Club guy. And we sitting up there and we talking about it. And I said, what's your take, Tim? He goes, there's something about this game. It's going to come down till the fourth quarter, and Ole Miss will get the ball, and it shouldn't have been that way. If you watch the game, and I like to go back over it and look at it again. Ole Miss had opportunities, and I just didn't see something from Dart in that game, and I didn't see anything offensively that would show me that this team was averaging 55 points a game.
Yeah, it's a situation where you watch this game and you look at the stats over the whole season, because we're 5 games into now. There's a sample size.
Right.
Is Jackson Dart too reliant on Trey Harris? Trey Harris has 50 catches, over 800 yards. The number 2 receiver has 15. There was 3 carries by the running back in the first half.
Yeah, I'll say this much. That's a drawback. And you see this in the NFL some when other players get PO'd about it because they're only throwing it to one guy, this and that and the other. But in college football, you can't depend on one player, because it's easier in college football to take away one player than it is to you to be able to say, all right, I'm going to throw the ball to a tight end. We don't see that. I mean, he caught one pass at the end of the game, the tight end did, who made the great play at the end. But from a standpoint, you got to use your running backs. You got to use your other receivers. I didn't see that. It was steady fast trying to throw the ball to Harris. And Harris just, you can't just have one receiver. And I know this football club in the past has had 2 or 3, sometimes 4 every time it goes into a game. But there was something about the offense. I think this is my take after watching it. And Steven, you got to understand, as being a former quarterback and being a guy who played the position, I looked at this game and I really – it looked like the offense was like, man, are we that good or we not that good? Or what we did in the 4 games, any indicative of what we're going to be this year. And man, after watching what they did at Kentucky, I'm thinking to myself, This is just an average offense right now. I mean, I agree they play nobody and they blow them out, but they have got to go back to the drawing board and spread the ball around like they used to do a couple of years ago. They were, everybody getting the feel of the football. Now you can't have one guy all the time to throw to.
Yeah, this game felt in a lot of ways, and I know that there's no number besides Kentucky's name, but it felt like the Alabama game a year ago, to where after the game, everybody was kind of doom scrolling Twitter. There was problems offensively. Where's the running game with Ole Miss? All of this. Why can't Lane win the big game? That was the weak thing. And then the next week against LSU, this offense looked completely different. Everything got fixed. So I think they can do it. I just think they may have gotten a little bit comfortable, if that makes sense.
Well, that's probably the word to use. I felt like they were comfortable in thinking, at any moment we're going to hit the big play. But you didn't see that in the game. There was like no deep throws, no consistent deep throws, no deep square ins and trying to get other people involved in the offense. And you're right about one thing. There was zero running game. You in this off, and you can't have at the end of the game, Dart was their running guy. When he fumbled the ball, thank God they were offsides. The game would have ended then. But he's not your guy to be your runner. You got to have running backs carry the football. And occasionally, yes, sneak in a quarterback carrying the football, but they have to rely on other players to help out. And I saw it was just Dart or Harris. Where was the running game? And I think if you'd have had a running game, now look, you got to give credit to Kentucky. They only gave up 17 points against a team that was averaging 55. And then Ole Miss gave up 20, which, it was a bad 20 if you want to look at it, because Ole Miss still should have won the football game, giving up 20 points.
Yeah, and there's a situation, I told people all during the week that this was the second best defense that Ole Miss was going to play this season. Whether or not they chose to believe it or not is kind of on them, but this was a very, very talented defensive team. They had some struggles offensively, but they had a couple of players they had the ability to make you hurt, and that Dane Key and Barry and Brown, those guys that made their plays, and Vandegrift played very well. My opinion on this is Kentucky played about a perfect game and still barely won it against an Ole Miss team that played poorly. I think you need to throw this in the trash, maybe watch the film and all that, but get ready, because I think the South Carolina game coming up, this is their season.
Well, it scares me the fact they are going to South Carolina, but really quick to end up on Kentucky. If you look at Kentucky, they almost beat Georgia Bulldogs. They lost 13-12. So Lane Kiffin should have knew something was there, that they got a good enough defense that, 17 points, 24 points might not win the game. But going into this game this weekend against a South Carolina team who sort of surprised me a little bit. Remember earlier they were having issues with Beamer and is he the right coach? And they're struggling, and they were talking about how good they were. And I think they lost a game early in the year they shouldn't have lost to, and they struggled to beat someone else. But they ended up playing some good football lately. And South Carolina is not an easy place to go and play. I've been there. I know what those people are over there. They support the Gamecocks. They'll be there ready to roll, knowing that Ole Miss is coming in off of a loss, figuring, hey, man, they were 4-0, ranked 6th in the country. Maybe they got knocked back to size. And so now we got to go out there and play these guys. And they're coming into us. At least they don't have to travel. But it's going to be tough playing at South Carolina. So Ole Miss better be prepared, because I know Beamer's going to have his team prepared, and it's SEC football, man. There's no Cape Cups anymore.
Yes, thanks for watching the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. When we come back, John Fourcade is going to get into that South Carolina game a little bit more with me. But first, I do want to let you know, hey, NFL fans, it is time to start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. You can bet on the Ole Miss South Carolina game. I think the line is about 9 points right now. Ole Miss is a road favorite in Williams-Brice. If you agree with it, if you don't, you can let your voice be heard. And when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, the latest play, and so much more in the same place where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Also, a new partner of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast is College Corner, your one-stop shop for all things Ole Miss. Game day is just around the corner. And if you're going to South Carolina, the color is powder. and you can go to the College Corner to pick up your perfect game day gear. Scott also just got a whole bunch of new Realtree Galaxy tumblers, and more stuff is on the way. Whether you're gearing up for football, basketball, or baseball, College Corner has you covered. They're located off of Sisk Avenue, right across from the new Chick-fil-A. Getting to the store is a breeze with a ton of parking. And for those of you out of state, no worries. Visit collegecornerstore.com where they turn around orders lightning fast. Trust me, this isn't a sales pitch. I get all of my Ole Miss gear from College Corner. So visit collegecornerstore.com or stop by the College Corner today. All right, John, let's turn our attention to South Carolina real quick. And South Carolina they have this weird infatuation with Juice Wells currently. Mm-hmm. And that they have been circling this game for weeks, if not months. This game has mattered. And Lane Kiffin, in the preseason, for those that don't remember, showed a video on there of Juice Wells playing, and he put the 2001 theme, which is the South Carolina entrance theme. They are very much a 2001 program, kind of trolling them. This is going to be a cauldron at Williams-Brice.
Look, anytime you can put something on a billboard, something on a big screen TV or anything to help motivate your team from what someone else has done, trolls, said, posted, that's the difference when I played. People didn't do all this. Then again, we didn't have the media that you're having now and everything. This game, listen, they lost to LSU by 3 points, and they had the game won. And they lost to LSU. They beat Kentucky. It just goes to show you who just beat Ole Miss, Kentucky. So this is not going to be a cakewalk. I don't care what Lane Kiffin feels, thinks, says, does, whatever it might be. They need to get away from all this circus atmosphere that's going on. Listen, everybody's talking, Lane and his dog. Lane's got his son on the sideline with a fire extinguisher. They got dunking basketball stuff on the sideline. Watch one kid blow up an ankle or knee goofing off of stuff. This has got to get rid of. We got to get back to football. No more of this off the field, on the sideline stuff. You're in the SEC now. You're a man's league. This is it. So this week's game, you lost Kentucky. You're going to South Carolina. South Carolina's got a quarterback now that – he might be transferred from Auburn. He's over there in South Carolina. The other guy's got a sore ankle. I don't know. They're not throwing the ball as much, but they are running the football. And I'm looking at a couple of guys that they're talking about in the running department. They better be prepared for the running game as well as multiple quarterbacks playing against them. Their defense is not bad. They just got through playing a good Kentucky defense. South Carolina's going to have a good defense. And the big question is that they're playing at home. Folks, they're a home team. Ole Miss has got to go their first road game. Okay, I mean, they went to Wake Forest, but that was nothing. This is the SEC first road game, and it's against South Carolina, who's actually, undefeated. Excuse me, they got 1-1 in the SEC, and they beat a good Kentucky team, and they barely lost to LSU when they had a 23-point lead, and they should have, or 15-point lead, I should say, and they should have beat LSU, and they didn't. But let's just say this. Ole Miss better be prepared. They better go in there and they better find a way to get this game. I don't care if it's close. A win's a win. And then you got to go each week now. It's guess who's right around the corner? LSU's down the street. So they better take care of business in South Carolina. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I'm genuinely looking forward to next week's show with you before the LSU game. I am genuinely looking forward to that right now, but we're not going to put the cart before the horse right now. And South Carolina's offense, their offensive coordinator is from the Kendall Briles tree. They do a lot of the same stuff that Ole Miss does. Rocket Sanders, the transfer from Arkansas, is their starting running back.
Yep.
Their defensive line is really good. They have a true freshman, Dylan Stewart, who is actually just a menace on the outside. And Ole Miss is famously, after this Kentucky game, they did not have Jaden Williams. Any concern about Ole Miss's offensive line going into Williams-Brice, especially with that noise?
Well, one thing is any indication of what happened this past week against Kentucky. I thought the offensive line didn't play as well. Then again, it's hard to justify it for the 4 teams they played prior to this game. It's like a 5A school playing a 2A school, if you know what I'm getting at in high school. when those 4 teams they played. Now they're playing 5A versus 5A. I mean, it's the big boys and the big boys. It's SEC. Going on a away trip, it's not like going to Vandy. You got, 38,000 fans there and 28,000 are all Ole Miss. You're going to, Bryce Stadium where, 80,000 people are going to be there, and you're only going to have 10,000 Ole Miss, if that. The rest are going to be all homegrown South Carolina. And so this is going to be a good battle. I mean, it's going to be another tested game for Ole Miss. They got tested last week in Kentucky and failed. They go to this game and lose this game. I'm sorry to say this, but you're looking at a 4-loss season for Ole Miss possibly.
Yeah, maybe worse than that. I figure if they lost to South Carolina, this might be a 5-7 team.
Yeah, it could easily go that way. I don't like to put numbers on it because you got to play that week. But if you just look on paper and everybody does it, they always, we got to win, a loss, win, loss. So when you lose 2 in a row in the SEC, knowing your chances of going to the SEC playoff championship game is out the door. Making a top 12 could be out the door. I mean, you'd have to run a table, but the schedule doesn't get easier. You got Georgia lurking, you got LSU, you got Georgia, you got A&M, you got Oklahoma. It does not get any easier for for Ole Miss.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first and listen every day. When we come back, we're going to talk to John about what happened to the New Orleans Saints yesterday. We'll talk about that in just a second. But first, Game Time is your place to get your Ole Miss tickets. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from receipts, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets. There's not a bad seat in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium, but you can see exactly what it looks like from that seat before you buy the ticket with Game Time. Their lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, all of the customer service stuff that you are looking for, they can do. So take the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets with Game Time. And with this being the most anticipated season in Ole Miss history, I might be able to help you out with tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So, John, New Orleans played Atlanta, and everybody that follows the Saints knows how big of a rival that is. Somehow Atlanta scored 26 points and managed to not score an offensive touchdown in the game and beat the Saints. I'm at a little bit lost for words. This is the same team that the first 2 weeks looked like an offensive juggernaut. Now they're getting beat by teams that are not scoring offensive touchdowns.
Well, this is a rival game. I was supposed to have been at that game. My girlfriend, she ended up going to her company. We go to the game every year, but this time I decided to go to Ole Miss because it's going to be my last game to really watch Ole Miss this year in person because I'm getting ready to have back surgery in a couple of weeks right after the LSU game. But let's get to this, Saints game. The Saints scenario was this. I'm trying to figure out what happened last week first in the Philadelphia game where their offense couldn't score. I mean, up and down 20-20. And after what they've done, averaging 44 points a game the first 2 games of the season, they're struggling offensively. They lost some players. They lost McCoy, the starting center, Cesar Ruiz, the right guard. To me, he wasn't all that much anyhow, but the center was a big key to this losing. They did some shuffling the offensive line. I think the offensive line is the issue they have in a little bit right now. They tone it down offensively. Everybody knows Alvin Kamara is getting way too many snaps and reps. He has to tone it down with him because you won't have him at the end of the year. Carr is down, reverted back a little bit to what happened last season with not having this protection on the offensive line. The receiving core is up and down. Olave has done well for him, but nobody else has really stepped up. Tight end hasn't stepped up. I don't know where the offense went the last 2 games. The defense is still there. Defense didn't give up a score. They didn't give up a touchdown or anything of that nature from the offense. So what is their issue? Atlanta, you play 60 minutes of football. I thought the Saints really at the end of the game had opportunities to put the game away, and they didn't. But Atlanta hung in there. The kid makes a 58-yarder, 56, 58-yarder, whichever that was. But it's the rival game. It's 2 teams that it's going to come down to the end, and these 2 guys hate each other. I don't know what's going on with the Saints right now. They better regroup. They lost 2 in a row, can't score points. It wasn't like the first 2 games. I mean, they smoked Dallas. I was shocked in that. Thought Dallas had a good defense, but now they got to go to Monday night game to Kansas City. I mean, are we really understanding what I'm saying? They're going to Kansas City, Super Bowl champs 2 years in a row, and they haven't played great football yet in Kansas City, but they're undefeated, 4-0, and they got a home game. When is it? Monday night. Who's going to be there? Taylor Swift, So what's going to happen with that? The big crowd. The Saints are going to be in some deep trouble right now if they don't try to find a way to get back to what they were doing in the first 2 games. They got some injuries, but everybody has injuries. And so this team, I didn't have them going, but maybe 5 games, first 5 games, I had them maybe 2 and 3 at best. But it's going to be fighting really hard to get to the next few games because who's coming in town in a couple of weeks is Sean Payton.
Yeah, that should be pretty interesting. And before I let you go on today, everybody's excited with Alabama and the way that they beat Georgia on Saturday and how that looked. But how come nobody's talking about the fact that Alabama nearly blew a 30-point lead at home?
That's true. It's all about the wins. You're right. I turned it off when it was 28-0, I believe. And I said, man, this is a butt whipping here. Best thing Georgia can do is get out of this game healthy and regroup because they take the top 2 teams. And Georgia still got a chance to go the rest of the way with 1 loss. But when I looked at Alabama, I'm thinking, whoa. When I put the game back on late, somebody called me and said, you got to be watching this game. I went, all right. I looked it back. I turned it right on when Alabama scores the 75-yard touchdown to take the lead again. And then Georgia's coming back down, have an opportunity themselves. So, but yeah, they're not going to talk about the negative things about Alabama. They won the football game. Who wants to worry about them blowing the lead? It's a win. It's a win. That's what they look at it. But I was surprised that, they jumped out on them like that. But overall picture, I could have seen Alabama winning the game at home. I could have seen Georgia going in and beating Alabama. It wasn't going to be a blowout either way. But interesting game at the end. And I don't know who's going to be playing for the SEC championship, but I guarantee there'll be somebody in it with 1 loss, maybe somebody in it with 2 losses. You never know.
Yeah, the SEC has a chance to get, honestly, just really weird over the next couple of weeks.
I still think they can get 4 guys into the top 12.
Yeah, I think so as well. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. John Fourcade joining the show each week like he always does. What do you got going on this week, man?
Just relaxing. Nothing much. Like I said, I get surgery on the 24th of October on my back, but I'm just going to relax at the house. I mean, I'm just nothing planned. My birthday is October 11th, right before they play the Tigers in Baton Rouge. That'll be the last game I'll go see, and then I'm going to be laid up for a few months.
Yeah, we're next Monday when we do the show, we're probably going to have a little bit of fun, and if we have after the LSU thing, we're probably going to have a little bit of fun too.
Okay, looking forward to it.
All right, John. Take care, buddy. And
all right, Steven. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.